the trap in the idea that they were going to be lowering interest rates in the future, but then the reality comes in that you have much higher interest rates, much to the opposite of what it is that everybody was expecting out there. And so when you think about what it is that the Federal Reserve has done as far as conducting their monetary policy, most people end up believing or thinking or feeling as if it's a political environment. And this is also part of setting the trap. They want you to believe that. They want you to believe that it is anything outside of what the reality of their strategy is. Now, I know that sounds like, a conspiracy theory kind of mindset, but it's really, when you look deep into it, very much how they play the game. They don't want to be very clear, even though they say they want to be very clear. They don't want to be very clear. They want to be very elusive in what it is that they are planning on doing with the future monetary policy when it comes to interest rate adjustments. I mean, if you think about it right now, how many people are exactly very much clear on what's going to take place with interest rates? Like nobody. Everybody is just like, man, nobody knows what's going on. Myron's saying that the neutral interest rate is falling and that they need to cut rates immediately. Other Fed officials are out there saying, maybe we need to cut, maybe we need to cut this time, but not next time. Some of them are saying that, no cut at all is like, totally appropriate. In that confusion that is now playing out within the economy, again, is setting up the trap. Because when people are saying, oh man, I'm waiting for the Fed to cut rates so I can get a better rate on my mortgage, this is probably one of the biggest misunderstandings that has taken place, because it is so well pushed out there through the mainstream media, through the even the president himself, like saying, like, Jerome is too late, Powell, with lowering interest rates, and that the American people are suffering the consequences of having these elevated interest rates without being able to get a mortgage that is cheaper. And then the moment that they cut rates, what happens? Boom, the exact opposite takes place and mortgage rates go up. So now I have to then ask, okay, well, Mr. President, if you got what you were asking for with the lowering of interest rates, but then get the exact opposite reality from it, what is it that you are expecting now from the Federal Reserve, since you don't really have the real appropriate strategy in mind when the reality works opposite of the situation that was then played out, right? I mean, the idea of lowering interest rates to bring mortgage rates down did not happen. Not in the fashion in which that everybody thought it would. Like everybody consistently seems to think it does. I mean, look at that, some of the links that I leave down in the description. I mean, there is headlines to gold slips based on expectation of Fed rate cuts, and gold like increases on expectation of Fed cuts. Like the same, like it's practically in the same day. Two different articles saying opposite things on the exact same information, right? This happens over and over and over again. And so when you step back and you think about what it is that the Federal Reserve was really wanting for their monetary policy, what they were really wanting for their monetary policy was elevated inflation and inflation expectations. And if you think about what it is that's being delivered to the economy right now is elevated inflation and inflation expectations, even though you hear about it coming down. Yes, it is coming down, but it's not coming down enough. It's still elevated. That's the point, right? It doesn't mean that the pressure relief hasn't got, like, it's not like the pressure hasn't been relieved some. It's not enough, and that's the point. It's elevated, and elevated inflation and inflation expectation is exactly what the Federal Reserve needed for their monetary policy. And now to understand why they needed it that way is to understand also that there is a neutral interest rate that was too close to zero. That right there is monetary policy from the Federal Reserve that then forced them to conduct themselves in a particular fashion that we now are seeing the results from. That low neutral interest rate environment and the absolute need to elevate inflation and inflation expectation to raise that neutral interest rate. When you step back and you look at all the things that are taking place now within the economy, it totally makes sense on what it is that's happening in order to achieve that outcome. Let me see, let me make sure that the Wi-Fi is turned off. Yeah, it is. Okay. So that's what you're seeing now taking place within the economy, is that exact outcome, is that when you raise the inflation expectations, you raise the inflationary scenario on account of it, and it raises the neutral interest rate, we end up with an economy that is far less restricted than anybody had given it consideration for. And that is now what is taking place with the top 20% of households. This is why they are so resilient in their consumption. People say, where's this resilient consumer coming from? It's only 2 out of 10 people, right? The top 20%. 80% of the people, if you go and ask the question out of 100 people, all right, you take a room, 100 people, random people, doesn't matter who they are, just random off the street, and you ask them, what do you think about the economy right now? 80% of them are going to say it's hell. It's terrible. It's not working out. It's a terrible experience, right? And then you got 20% of them are saying, I don't know. I mean, I got a bunch of assets and it's kicking ass and I'm doing really well and I'm actually increasing my consumption. So this is the reason why the sentiment is so in the toilet. But yet at the same time, the reality of the situation is much different. That's why, like, I find so amusing when I think about what it is that is now happening within the ideas of the administration trying to push some of the ideas that they are going to bring some sort of benefit back to the American people, and yet the reality is it's nothing but punishment. I mean, even the Secretary of Agriculture yesterday, I thought was just incredibly humorous in saying that we inherited this incredible huge problem from Biden. All right, fine. Let's accept that. The labor growth was too much and it caused inflation and we need to bring that down. So what she is saying is that Biden caused wages to go too high and that they need wages to come down in order to combat the inflation. This is what her argument was. This is coming from just a statement just a few days ago. I think about what it is that's really happening within this economy, not the noise, not the expectations, none of that stuff. I just look back and I think, okay, well, we have inflation expectations that are elevated. We got a working class individual that doesn't seem to be recovering in the consuming of in the consumption portion of the economy. They're not recovering. The people who are recovering are the top 20% of household incomes. They're the ones who are doing well because of the asset allocations that they have put themselves in. This is the reason why the average everyday person is giving sentiment out there that it's terrible. It's obvious to me that there's really very little that can be done, especially if you're planning on introducing more new money into the system. This ever-increasing amounts of separation between the rich and the poor is not changing. It's obvious that's what's happening due to the fact of the new money. And then there were certain people out there who thought, well, if I'm going to have access to this new money, I better put it towards something that is going to have a return. And then they totally excelled away from everybody else who was saying, hey, I just need a working class job so that I can pay the bills and then have a little bit left over so I can raise a family and maybe have a retirement, and all those people get left behind. It's easy to blame those people for doing it, but then again, what is it that you're planning on doing once you figure out this information? I mean, are you going to sit around going, okay, well, the problem is all these people who have cut back on their necessities, expenses, increased their income as much as possible, deployed that money towards some sort of return, and now those are the people who are the problem. That's literally what is being stated when they say like the rich shouldn't have all this, or the people who have acquired assets just they shouldn't be there. They should tax it away. They should take it away from those people. And I'm thinking this is exactly what they did. They cut back on their necessities and they acquired assets, and now people want to blame them for it. And I think to myself, if you don't do that, what do you expect is going to happen? You're going to be left behind. It's almost scary. I look out there and I think about how many people I see suffering the consequences of their inactions when they were younger. Okay? I mean, I know I'm like one of those who's trying to admit to that at 40 years old that I had really, really, really messed it up. And that I have one shot to try and figure this thing out. And by putting my money or cutting back on my expenses and then trying to put my money towards something that is going to have a return into the future, whether it's assets that increase in price or have some sort of return on as some sort of yield. This is the idea that I believe that I need to go into in order to have some sort of security in my life going into the future. And I think to myself, man, if people don't do that, then they can be left behind. There's nothing left for them. Because everybody else, people like me, anybody who's like, decided that they're going to do that in their life, once they have figured that out and they do it appropriately and they do it long enough, then yeah, they're going to put themselves in a position in which it seems like they are very rich and stingy and greedy and all the other stuff that went with it. But very few people will ever think, man, dude, way to be very disciplined and very determined in what it is that you had going on with your experience in this world. This is the trap that they set. The belief that they can do anything to help you out is incorrect. And here's the thing, if they can't help you out, then they're not really hurting you either. You ever thought about it like that? If there's nothing that they can do to help you, there's nothing they're really doing to hurt you either. And that is probably one of the most punishing experiences for most people to then internalize, is that they really have to then look at themselves and say, what is it that's going on that's forcing me to be in the hellhole that I am in? Because I know it's now down to my own decision-making process that's got me there, because there's people out there who are killing it right now. What are they thinking about? All right? What is it that they're thinking about that has them in a position in which that they are doing very well, excelling, paying their bills on time, and starting businesses and doing side hustles and figuring out how it is that they are going to actually try and attempt to live this American dream in this economy? There's other people out there who are thinking in a way that then gets them in a position in which that they actually do well. And then there's a way of thinking that deteriorates you over time. Think about which one of those you want to be thinking about. Right? Do you want to think about the one that says, hey man, you have no hope, they are doing this, they are punishing you, they are causing you to go into slavery, there is no expectations of any kind of any choices that you make that are going to be appropriate, there is no way of doing that? Are you going to listen to that sort of mindset? Or are you going to listen to the mindset of people who are like, no, there is a way that you can acquire properties, there are ways that you can start businesses, there are things that you can do to cut back on your expenses and increase your flow? It's up to you, and that's really where it comes down to, is that the trap is really within your own thoughts. The Fed doesn't set the trap, the Fed sets up the opportunity for you to do it. Whether or not you're going to send yourself into a luxurious experience or you're going to send yourself into a cash flowing position, it's entirely up to you. You didn't have to punish yourself. You didn't, you could have totally rewarded yourself. And it's not really the Federal Reserve is doing it, it's your own decision. It's your own belief system. It's the meaning that you have given it. And I know that's probably one of the hardest things to accept, because most people have given it meaning of punishment, failure, depression. I know. You can't explain it as well if you haven't done it yourself, right? See, that's the problem that I was facing for so long, and why it is that I feel like back in the day, before I decided that I was going to change everything about my life, including the major part, which is to give up the alcohol. Before all that, I thought about some of the things I think back to some of the things that I was thinking about in the day, and it was like, yeah, no wonder why I was in the position I was in. I think about the conversation I was having, the beliefs that I was taking on, the research that I was doing, all of it. Like, there wasn't a single benefit of any of that stuff. Except for the learning lesson. I guess there was that. I definitely learned some lessons. So as we look into the future of what it is that the Federal Reserve is doing, it's pretty easy to think about, okay, raising the neutral interest rate, getting closer to the Fed funds rate. Set everything else aside. Think about that for just a minute, and that's what they are trying to do. Everything else is like essentially a symptom of that strategy. How close can they get the neutral interest rate to the Fed funds rate, and how far off the lower bound can they get the neutral interest rate? Those are the two questions. If you're looking at it from any other direction, then really you are looking at a symptom of that. Because that's the Fed's strategy right there, is to focus in on those things. By raising that neutral interest rate, it gets ever closer to the Fed funds rate. I've said this a million times. It makes the economy less restricted. You can see the evidence of that in the top 20% of household incomes. This is not like, I don't even have to, this is easy to see. You can just go and Google all this for yourself, right? And you don't even have to Google it. It's just in the narrative, I mean, it's already out there. I don't even have to explain it or research it or show it. You can just obviously see it, that that's what's being stated out there. That neutral interest, when you find information about the neutral rate, that is, I mean, it's very rare that you even hear anybody even talk about it. But when you find that that has moved up, in fact, what were they saying in the speeches just recently, given that it has moved 100 basis points closer to the Fed funds rate than a year ago, and then they've been lowering rates. So you think about it, this is very close together. Soon these will be at the same spot. How many people are expecting a neutral position that is elevated? Very few. Very, very, very few people. And there would be no reason to lower the Fed funds rate below neutral unless there is some sort of financial issue, recessionary issue, labor market issue going out of control. Right now, none of that. Like, we have the agriculture secretary saying, hey, we're pushing down on labor right now. It's getting better. It's getting better for the inflationary scenario, right? Like the Federal Reserve is supposed to be supporting labor, and she's saying, no, we're pushing down on labor. Like, these are contradictory things. This is why I find it so amusing. It's like I look out there and I'm like, oh yeah, what else are you gonna say, people? Are you gonna continue on with this stuff? Because I'm looking at it in a whole different light. I know that there's nothing that they can do to the labor market that's going to increase the inflationary scenario. The flattening of the Phillips curve after the great financial crisis has already proved that. The working class individual does not participate in the additional consumption. We are not part of the aggregate demand. We're just not doing it. That we don't get enough money to participate in an increase in aggregate demand. There was a time when we did. But because we didn't allocate into assets, we didn't buy rental properties, we didn't buy all the stocks and bonds and everything else that the rich people did, then we ended up being left behind. Because when those things increased in value and price and cash flow and yield and all that other stuff, and we were sitting here wondering what we were going to do with our hourly wages, we were left behind because they started doing all the consumption. We used to do the consumption because we produced the world's greatest stuff and sent that out there to the world, and the world sent us their money, and we increased our consumption. That was easy. We were in the manufacturing state, which gave us that ability to do it. But once that became very difficult to then be competitive in, our ability as working class individuals just sank and sank and sank in the consumptions. We just couldn't consume like we used to. And all that, and if you're a central banking system that is trying to increase aggregate demand, and the only way to increase aggregate demand is through consumption, and through that consumption, the increase in the increase in labor or the lowering of unemployment failed to produce the inflationary scenario that they were looking for, evidence of the great financial crisis and the Obama administration, the end of the Obama administration, all the way through the first Trump administration with historically low unemployment, failed to produce an inflationary scenario for the Federal Reserve. Like, I understand other people are like, dude, there's all kinds of inflation. You're looking at it wrong. Okay, whatever. That's not up to me to decide what it is that the inflation that they are looking for. It's up to me to look at what information that they are looking at in order to conduct their monetary policy, because it's not up to me. They didn't see inflation. They complained about it. 2018, John Williams' speech, Monetary Policy Strategies for a Low Neutral Interest Rate World. The problem we need to solve these days is the risk of inflation that is persistently too low rather than too high. They have solved that problem. I don't know how else to explain this to people, but very rarely do I see anybody delivering a message that is that. Most of the messages that I hear is symptoms. Constant exposure of the symptoms and then blaming those symptoms as the problem. It is very inaccurate. Even the Secretary of Agriculture, that is everything that she was talking about is symptoms. Symptoms of the overabundance of money that has flowed into the system. This has separated the rich from the poor. It's made our manufacturing very difficult. Our working class individuals will not be able to keep up. And the ever increasing amounts of inequality that has now pushed the purchasing power up to the top 20% of household incomes has left us behind, and it is not going to return. That is scary as hell for most people to internalize. They don't want to hear it, and I understand why. It makes me fearful for my kids. Like, I mean, I think about, damn, what is it that my little Freddie's going to do in the future if he just has a regular day job and doesn't have some sort of mindset to be in the allocation, the acquiring, the partnership of being in those cash flowing assets. If you do not start that from a very, think about it right now. Here, I'm getting a little excited. So we talk about Freddie, you know what I mean? Okay, so when you think about some of the things that even the administration and some of these big time economists are saying, that there should be an account started from birth that then starts positioning into the stock market, because if you don't do that, you will be left behind. There will be nothing for you if you do not do that from day one. And that's going to happen at some point in the future. That if that doesn't happen from the very first day, even the acquiring of the assets won't work if you start too late. So the earlier you start, the better, and the more that people do it, the more it's going to be needed, that a needed requirement of life in order to have anything inside of your existence, because you're going to be so far behind it won't even be funny. And I don't care about all the UBI and all that other stuff. That ain't going to work. I mean, it'll work for a little bit. It'll work as it initiates, but eventually it'll deplete out too. And like, I mean, maybe in our lifetimes it'll be cool, but going into the future and for my kids, for the future, it's not a good idea. That's a very, very, very bad idea. Unless you take all your UBI and use that to get into the stocks and stick in rental properties or something. And you have to think, when you do this, you are literally setting up the people who don't do it for a horrible existence. But if you don't do it, you're going to be one of those people. Then what? All right? I mean, if you don't do it, then you're going to be one of those people. And if you do it, you're going to create there's going to be those people if you do it. What else are you going to do? I mean, if you see this coming, and you know that wedge is going to get driven, and you know there's going to be ever increasing amounts of new money coming into the system, and you know how it separates the rich from the poor, what is it that you're going to do? Pretend like it doesn't happen and then say, oh no, we're going to vote for people who are going to prevent that from occurring? Good luck. All right? It's better to understand what it is that's taking place so you can position yourself. If you don't do it, I don't know what to tell you, you know? And it's scary as hell, because you probably are going to fail at some point doing this. You know, rental properties will get foreclosed on. Stocks you picked will go belly up. There's issues that will happen going into the future. But if you don't do it, what else are you going to have? Nothing. Yeah, you won't have anything anyway. So you might as well at least fail a little bit in the early days and not fail a lot, but fail enough to learn so that you can do well going into the future. I don't know what else to tell you guys. The trap is set. It's already there. Like, I mean, I see the bait, I see the jaws, I see the need, I see all of it there, and I'm looking out at people who just don't see it. Like, they are just zipping all over this trap, and I'm thinking, man, that thing is going to slam shut at some point, and you're going to be so far behind. You know? And that's scary. You know, I look at people right now who don't have anything. They're like, they literally are in their retirement, getting closer to their retirement years, within years of it, within days, some months, weeks, who knows, right? So close, and they have nothing but the expectation that they might get their Social Security checks, and that's it. And I'm like, what in the hell are you going to do? All those years you had the opportunity to do something, but you didn't. You know? Let's go check out the super chat before we end the stream. And thank you so much, everybody who's joined in. We got 199 people watching with 49 likes. Where's the super chat? I don't see it. Hold on here, guys. I gotta reload my messages. Boom, there it is. Okay, thank you. Joining rum. Joining rum. Joining rum. Okay, $9.99. Thank you so much. My roller skating rinks use Apple Square POS system, and they take Bitcoin now. And our first transaction just went down. They do it with 0 fees. Why do you think there's no fees to using BTC? Well, they're probably using a secondary layer system of some sort. They're probably not using the exact blockchain the exact distributed ledger of Bitcoin. They're using a secondary system, whether it's even using Coinbase or something like that, so you can do an instantaneous or less fees if you have that particular secondary, because it's a third party intermediary is essentially taking place in that. Because you really think about it, the skating rink doesn't want Bitcoin. They don't mind accepting Bitcoin, but they don't want Bitcoin. They want cash. Right? Everybody wants cash, so it's an instantaneous transaction. Like I'm assuming that's what's going on. Was the intro commercial? I like commercials because it tells me what they are trying to sell to people. And what's funny is like the commercials for like YouTube and all that are specific for you. I mean, they are like, they are in a way like I get higher end commercials for having better quality content that gets a lot of like likes and shares and stuff like that. So if the algorithm picks it up, that's a decent video that people are really enjoying, then I get higher quality commercials that get put on the channel, but they're really geared for you. Nobody on this stream doesn't live in abundance, just can't see it or don't want to see it. Well, yeah, and that's really what it comes down to, is that abundance is everywhere. And once you kind of see it, then you don't really think about not having it. It's always there, constant. Like there's never not an abundance. It's only people who don't think that there is an abundance. And I know that's very difficult, because that was a hard thing for me to accept and learn, as I was trying to figure out what it was that was taking place with me in this channel and the growth and everything else, as I was starting to realize, almost in a reverse engineering process, thinking about what it was that was going on in my own mindset, that then gave essentially the clear understanding of what I needed to do in order to acquire what I feel is the abundance in my life. Like, it's weird. I know I don't have no $1 million. I don't have no fancy jets. I don't have any like that fancy stuff in my life. I don't have fancy cars. I drive old cars, right? But what's really interesting about it is that it already kind of seems that it's there. Maybe not so much the jets, but definitely a lot of the experiences, the ability to have a brand new car, the things that I do in my life. Like I don't feel or think about the limitations. I just don't. And at least not in a lot of ways that people would say, hey man, how do I get abundance in my life? And I'm thinking, what is limiting you from abundance? It's all there. I don't understand. And I think back to the time when I would like hang out with my buddy who really understood this very well. And he picked up his phone and he was like, man, have you ever seen one of these? And I'm like, of course. He was just like, you do realize that you can get anything you want with one of these, right? And he's talking about a cell phone. He's looking at me like, don't be dumb, And I'm thinking, you're right. It is that easy. Everything is out there. Right? You just got to be in a position to be able to acquire it. How do you do that, right? That sometimes can be a little tricky in the sense that people think, oh man, if I want a YouTube channel, I got to have this equipment, this done, and they're thinking about all this stuff. And I'm thinking, no, what you have to do is put out videos. That's it. Right? Once you put out videos, you're not going to like them. That's cool. You're going to learn what you do and what you don't like about them, and then you're going to start growing from that. And that's the point, right? You don't have to limit yourself to starting a YouTube channel. You can start a YouTube channel right away. Just like anything else out there, you can just go out there and start doing it right away. Are you going to be good at it? No, you're going to fail. Failure is the first part of learning. First attempt in learning, right? That's what All-Nighter says. And so when you think about it as that, then you're thinking, okay, well, I'm just heading down this process of getting there. Even me, not having acquired like a huge giant bank account or anything like that, it's like I'm building one, right? Like I'm on my way. I mean, I can't do it instantaneously. This is a path that I'm heading down. And I don't want to say that I'm lazy, but I feel somewhat lazy in the idea that, man, I should be going for more money, right? Like I should actually be attempting to try and get sponsors and do all this other stuff for the channel and try to elevate that money position. But then I got to thinking about it. It's just like, until I can't pay my bills on time, I'm not going to really worry about making money. Like the money just flows. I just put myself in a position in which that it can happen. And then when it comes, and like, other times when it feels like it's like, oh man, what's going on? Why is it so slow? I just have to remember, dude, ups and downs, peaks and valleys, nothing goes up forever. Right? Just be helpful and useful and continue to do that, and then everything will be fine. All right, 30 minutes into this live stream, you all want to call it quits? If you don't want to call it quits, you want to continue for another few minutes, keep hitting that like button. We got 63 likes and 188 people watching. All right. Down to the bottom. Here we go. Simon, reminder that you should plug your Patreon. Well, thank you, Brody. And again, like, not trying to feel lazy, but I feel like I have not been very active on Patreon, and I have a hard time plugging it if I'm not going to be there regularly. But you're right. I should be typing more. I should be, putting out those articles and talking about some of the more common things that are happening right now. Understanding where it is that the Federal Reserve is attempting to try and maintain the idea of promoting maximum employment while at the same time pushing down on inflation. And this contradicts their process, like their tool, right? And so people who look at the Federal Reserve and say they're stuck, they don't know what to do, they have to make a choice, they're trying to figure this out, they're really lost. That's because they have these two different directions in which they have to go in order to achieve the dual mandate. So, right, if they lower interest rates, they can support the labor market. If they raise interest rates, they can bring inflation down. Which one is it that they need to do? But then the reality of the situation comes in is that they lowered interest rates, but then you look out there at the rates that actually were impacting our lives and they increased. They went the exact opposite way. So here it is. They're like, hey, we're trying to support the economy by lowering interest rates. Fed cut rate, we cut the Fed funds rate, totally supportive of the economy. And then the reality is that they have banking constraints that are taking place within the balance sheet requirements that has then put a liquidity kind of issue taking place within the financial system that shows elevated interest rates. And so, like, that part is really complicated. I have to give it to Heresy Financial. Excellent video. Last 10 minutes, I think it was the last one that he had done, maybe yesterday, I guess. Excellent. Like, the last 10 minutes are pure gold, right? So anyway, talking about the liquidity requirements that are within this big banking system that is now showing up as like, oh, liquidity issues within the Fed's going to have to immediately fire off the quantitative easing and all this other craziness. And then, like, it turns out that, no, they're playing a regulation game that is different from the mainstream media narrative of, hey, we're lowering interest rates to support the unemployment or to support the labor market. Okay, you guys run with that idea. Meanwhile, the regulations within the big banking system is doing quite the opposite, and it's making the system tighter. All right? They're delivering a message and then acting much differently. And this is part of the game because they have to fight these two different things. They have to fight the inflationary scenario, right? They don't have to, but apparently they're trying to bring inflation down. Right? And so I just laugh at this because I don't really believe it. But if we were to assume that they are attempting to get it down to a 2% target like they say they are, right? The efforts that they are putting in within the banking requirements, regulations, liquidity issues that are happening within the banking system itself is complementary to that environment. Right? It's going to create the tightening effect within the financial system to bring the inflation down. Well, at the same time, they deliver a message to the mainstream media. It's like, hey, we're trying to support the working class. Go workers. We have some sort of CDs. Some are just swimming in it. People are not control over the government. People are not in control over the government. Yeah. All right. We all have some sort of CD. I don't know what. Okay. Okay. You should also do say 1 in every 4 investments as Patreon only content, for example, or every 1 in 4 live streams. Oh yeah, and I was thinking about that, Brody. I was actually looking at some of the best practices for YouTube channels, and really, ultimately, I already knew it, but I was pretty suspecting of it. And one of the reasons why the channel is somewhat stagnant is because of the sheer amount of content that I put out. People just simply like people who enjoy the channel, that's fine, but they don't have an hour every single day to, dedicate to my channel. They don't have 2 hours a week. And some people only have 10, 15 minutes. And so if they don't, you know, want to watch the whole thing, if they do catch the first 10 minutes, it's kind of almost a like discouraging thing to have so much content out there. It's like it's like oversaturation of content onto the channel. And I kind of always knew it, but I just didn't care. Right? I was like, you know what? I don't care. I like doing the channel. I like being out here, and it's not so much about like what it is that's best for the channel. It's best for like what it is that we're attempting to do here, and that is to have a better understanding of the economy and what it is that we can do for ourselves if we happen to be in the working class position who isn't sure on what it is that we need to do in order to get ourselves on the other side of the wedge, knowing that it's going to get driven deeper. Like, to me, talking about that every single day is like fun for me. It's something that I really enjoy doing, and I really enjoy seeing the few hundred to 1,000 people who come here regularly to watch this content and share their views and have conversations with each other. It's amazing on how much that happens. And so when I think about like what it is that I'm doing here, I am really trying to be helpful and useful, and that to me I think should be rewarded in its own in time. Like, it's me practicing this that is going to be able to do something in the future with that ability. To come out here, talk 45 minutes, like what is he now, 36 minutes straight about economics and what it is that my philosophy is about it, and bring in like current situations that are now happening within it to relate to the credible threat theory. Like, to me, being able to continuously talk about this for 30 minutes is like, man, maybe I'll be on the radio someday and not have any dead air space, or do other podcasts, or do something else. I don't know. All right. I like the authenticity of your channel. It's consistent. Well, thank you, Maverick. I really appreciate that, because that's really important to me, that I deliver authenticity to you. Like, I can't fake it. I'm not going to try and fake it. I'm not going to try and fake it with a fancy car or fancy life or fancy things that I got going on, because that's not me. That's not what I do. I grew up very much in the working class position. My dad was in the military when I was young. He ended up working for the Park Service when, I was a teenager. When I graduated, I'm in that same town that I graduated high school in, well, just outside. My kids go to the school that I went to school in. I'm very, like, small time, right? But I really enjoy economics. And I studied economics like relentlessly. I listened to so many people. Peter Schiff was probably my number one dude, right? I probably listened to more Peter Schiff than anybody else out there. And I got a real good understanding of like the Federal Reserve's process, their actions. Got a good understanding of the gold. He actually corrected me on my channel here before, And so when I think about what it is that I was doing long time ago, I was doing the research and essentially positioning myself in a way that I could then use that knowledge, that understanding, and then also the ability to like essentially be on stage and deliver this information. And it's been a very long process. It's taken forever, 25 years now. I don't know. I mean, the channel itself has been going for about 7. All right. Nobody here is afraid of hunger, just afraid of not being uber wealthy. I don't know about. I'm not really not afraid of being wealthy, like uber wealthy. Like, I would imagine someday it would be cool to have, like, it would be like, wow, dude, $100 million, that's neat. All right. But really, I'm not really into material things. So like, it would be cool to have a truck and I don't know, jet ski. Jet ski would be cool. I'm thinking of luxurious items that I would want, like a truck and a jet ski would be like the most luxurious thing I could think of. After that, I want like good food. I want food that, like, I want to try really awesome food that I've never had before. That to me would be exciting. I want to go and visit places that I have never seen. That to me would be exciting. Like, I want to, check out some of the old, like, South American ruins and stuff like that. Go down to Pumapunku and check out those big old, those rocks that they have down there. Those symmetrical rocks that they made and stuff. Anyway, those are kind of my thoughts and stuff. So when people are like kind of scared about not being rich, and it's just like, no, I'm more like, my fear is that I would not position the family in a way that they would be okay if I wasn't here. That's like my fear, is that I didn't do it right for them, and then one day I would be gone, and then they would have to figure it out on their own. And as an individual who is trying as much as I can to figure out what it is that I need to do, and then share that idea out there with everybody else, and hopefully with that sharing of that idea, then I can then position myself. Like, I'm essentially very greedy with this channel on account of that. Like, I'm using it to try and do that. And some people are like, oh, dude, you're just doing this for the money and the ad revenue and stuff. It's like, the channel doesn't really make that much money. Like, it does. Like, don't get me wrong. When I was doing the lumber videos and you're getting 10, 20, 30, 40,000 views a video, yeah, the channel does quite well. When you're taking sponsorships, it does incredibly well. There's people who have a third of the viewers that I have, and they make 3 times as much money as I do, maybe even more. But it's not about the money. Right? To me, it never was about the money. Not from the day that I started it, not to during the times in which that it did very well. I thought, man, if this money's going to flow in like this, I may only have one shot with it. What are you going to do? Right? And I was like, pay off my debts and get a house. Right? That's what, I didn't even really want the house. I'd much rather have been in assets, but I was almost forced into the house, and I kind of think I'm pretty thankful that it did. But when I think about that in that sense, it was just like, what I am trying to do literally is very stingy, and that is try to use this platform to get a better understanding of economics so that I can then position myself. And by sharing that information, I think the other viewers of this channel have also been able to retain some of that information so that they can better position themselves as well. So as much as it is a symbiotic relationship as we have this conversation, I am stingy with it. It's for me to elevate myself. I don't know what you guys are doing. Maybe it's for entertainment, maybe it's for just curiosity, or maybe it is to learn something. I don't know, but I got my intent, All right. Taking ownership is how you attain things. Yeah. What time is it? Bummer, guys. Okay, this was getting to be a lot of fun. We're 43 minutes into this live stream with 193 people watching, 83 likes. Do me a favor, go hit that like button. Hitting that like button, you'll get the YouTube algorithm to spread this video around. After we upload it, we can definitely continue this conversation within the comment section of this video. And, Brody, I think you're right, man. I think what's going to end up happening here in the future is I might start cutting back. I might have to actually wean myself off of making videos. So I may end up skipping a day, every other day, trying to put out less content here on YouTube. But since I just so adamant about putting on content, I'm just going to start maybe putting out content more on the other platforms that are out there, on the other social medias. Patreon's a great place, and you're right, Brody. I should be there spreading a lot of this information, and maybe we'll go and start reading some speeches over there and rehashing out the credible threat theory again. That's a good idea. All right. Thank you, guys. Happy Thanksgiving. I hope you guys enjoy that one. Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.